What's up, guys? Losing day yesterday, breaking my win streak. Unfortunately, there was, 3 or 4 days, 2-3-1 yesterday. The NFL was 1-1-1, I think. Miami, that was the worst one, obviously, although I think the final score was so out of control. I think the game was a little bit closer than the final score looked, but still, Baltimore, really good team, man. Really good team. Miami, I don't think they're quite on the level of a couple of these other teams that are a bit above where they are. So they're going to need to find some answers, I guess. But I don't know if they're going to come. The Colts should have covered. The Colts were winning the entire game. That was like wire to wire. They just couldn't quite get enough separation. Had a couple of instances where they had to get field goals instead of touchdowns. They were up 10 for a lot of the game, then wound up giving up that touchdown near the end and wound up pushing the 3 because at least I was on the best number with the 3, but that was pretty aggravating because Indy was just winning the whole game. I think they should have covered. And then even though maybe statistically it didn't quite look that, I think statistically they did have a slight edge as well. So could have gone either way as far as the stats are concerned, I guess. But they had the game in hand. They were winning the whole game by a couple scores for a lot of it. So I think they should have covered. And then New Orleans did cover and win outright. They had a nice game yesterday at Tampa. Had a really good opening drive to that game, long, prolonged touchdown drive, and then pretty much didn't look back. Nice win for New Orleans there. Washington State got there in college basketball, and that game was closer than the final looked to. They were in that game for much of it, and they were still within 3 in like the final minutes of that game, and I think it wound up going to intentional fouls, which is why it wound up 7. 7 is like kind of one of those typical basketball scores that you see where it becomes a 3-score game and you stop intentionally fouling at that point. So I think that's what happened there. But they got there plus the 8.5, so they covered. I think the line was down a little bit when that game went off. And then I forget what was the other game that I had? Brooklyn, that was a really frustrating one in the NBA. Brooklyn, if you look at the statistics of that game, Brooklyn had way more possessions, way more field goal attempts, way more three-point attempts, more free throw attempts, more rebounds, fewer turnovers, and I think the assist battle was at least like close. I have no clue how they didn't even cover that, and they were covering for a majority of the game, I think, and then suddenly in the fourth quarter, they just weren't really actually covering anymore. But I don't know how you have that many more possessions and that many more shot attempts than your opponent, and you don't even come within the 8 points or whatever. The field goal discrepancy was just ridiculous. It was like, 56, 58% on the Oklahoma City side to like 30-something% on Brooklyn's side. And then Oklahoma City was like 56% from 3-point range. Something like that, just outlier field goal percentages, and that's pretty much what did it. Brooklyn, I think, outplayed them for much of that game, so that was difficult to see, and that was kind of the difference between the win and the loss yesterday, too. That was not good. We move on to today. There's a decent slate of games today, but I only have one play on this whole slate today, and unfortunately, the number is actually gone, too, so I apologize for that, because I took it a few days ago at this point. I'm sorry about that, but what can you really do, I guess? So we have college football today. The remaining bowls are today. There are 5 more bowl games, which include the actual playoff games. So these are we have 4 of the rest of the New Year's 6 bowls, including those playoff ones, and then I guess the other 2 New Year's 6 games already got played. One was that Georgia-Florida State game. I think that was the Peach Bowl, and then I forget what the other one was. So is the Cotton still considered one? Because that was even like a couple days before that. I don't even know. Up first, so before we get to the primetime big playoff games here, the games that actually matter to teams, we have a few games that might not matter to certain teams as much. The ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa, Florida is up first. That is what is that? Is that the Verbo ReliaQuest? Did I get that right? No, it's just Relia. I guess ReliaQuest is the name. Or no, Verbo does the Fiesta Bowl. Now, ReliaQuest is up first. That's LSU and Wisconsin. This game was LSU's down from 10.5 to 9 with 76% of the tickets, 77% of the cash on them. So it looks like they have a slight cash discrepancy as it stands right now. I don't think I buy that really. I buy more into the fact that the line is dropping on LSU a bit. LSU has more like more players missing for this game. They had Jaden Daniels. I believe he is the Heisman winner for this year. He was their quarterback. He is entering the NFL draft, and he is not playing in this game. And, there's the whole thing about like the Heisman curse in bowl games and Heisman hangover in bowl games. I don't know if that's really going to matter here, but Jaden Daniels is not playing in this game. So they are going with, I forget the name of their next quarterback up in line. They do have a guy who's already, I think he's a sophomore, so he's already been on the team a couple of years now, basically. But this is going to be his first start with LSU. Whoever their next quarterback in line is going to be playing in this game, and it's going to be like, we're going to see what you can do, basically. So I do lean to Wisconsin in this one a little bit. I think they have a more intact team than LSU does for this game, and even though they've had some guys hit the transfer portal and hitting the NFL draft as well. And actually, hold on. As long as they're still with their quarterback, though, that's kind of the main piece there. Yeah, they do still have their quarterback for this game. So Wisconsin, even though they're kind of turning into like a more passing offense, they still have the better defense out of these two teams. I think LSU, everybody thinks of LSU as like this good like SEC defensive team. That is not the case anymore. LSU does not have a very good defense, and they had one of the best offenses in football. But now Jaden Daniels, Heisman winner, is gone. So is their offense going to take a little bit of a step back in this bowl game? I don't know. Maybe. You're getting a lot of points with Wisconsin here, who might be the more motivated team. Is the team that still has their starting quarterback there, I believe, and is the team that has the better defense. So I would lean to Wisconsin there a little bit. In the not the Camping World Bowl, even though it's another game in Camping World Stadium in Orlando, the Citrus Bowl, which is the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl now with this is Iowa, Tennessee. This game's dropped from Tennessee 7.5 to 5.5 with juice. You might be able to get like a 6 or somewhere in that range on Iowa. I took a 7.5 though before the line moved like a long time ago. So I apologize to you guys. This is the only game that I'm actually on. I don't know if maybe I should give some of these bowls out on the days that I take them, but I wasn't sure that the line was going to plummet as much as it did. And what happened in this game was that Tennessee, their quarterback, Milton, I believe, he wound up deciding to not play in this game. And I think he's entering the NFL draft as well. So he is now not playing in this game. And I believe they're playing a true freshman quarterback in this game now. So I don't think that looks great for Tennessee in this game. And their starting running back, I believe, is also entering the NFL draft and not playing in this game. So Tennessee, a couple of key components on their offense, not playing in this game anymore, which has caused the line to drop a little bit. 57% of the cash on Tennessee, but 58% or 57% of the tickets, on Tennessee, 58% of the cash on Iowa now. Iowa has one of the best defenses in the country, man. And I don't think people are really going to want Iowa. Like the public is going to look at this in maybe not even realize that Tennessee is missing their quarterback and running back for this game. But even if they are, I think people are going to say this is a team that we've seen score this year. They're in the SEC. They're way better than Iowa. And what's the knock on Iowa, of course, is that Iowa can't score at all. Iowa has no offense, right? Yeah, I mean, but Iowa did have to go up against a bunch of Big Ten defenses. Though. The last we saw them, they were up against Michigan, who has one of the best defenses in the country. And Iowa, I thought they would still cover that gigantic number in that game, and they were very close to doing so. It was that game. It was like there were like a few different plays, or if one of the plays had gone differently, Iowa still would have come within the number and covered. Or if Iowa had just scored once in that game, they would have covered. I think Iowa will be able to score some in this game. People are not going to want anything to do with them because their offense looks so inept, but they're getting points here. I don't think they're going to need to score that many points here against a Tennessee team. I think might be a little bit less motivated in this one. I don't know. If you're Tennessee, you were in the SEC, you started out ranked really high. Like the thoughts were that Tennessee might be able to potentially compete for the SEC, potentially maybe even make the SEC title game and somehow get through either Georgia or Alabama, even though that was a tall task. And now they're in the Citrus Bowl here, which is not one of the biggest bowls, really, even though it is a New Year's Bowl. Now their quarterback and running back aren't here anymore. They're up against a very good Iowa defense, which I think the Iowa defense might be able to hold a Tennessee offense that has a lot of new components, especially their quarterback here, hold them down a bit, and Iowa might be able to score against this Tennessee defense that is not as good as some of these other defenses that Iowa has run into this year. So I like Iowa here, and the public is just not going to want to be on Iowa at all. I think Iowa's an undervalued team here. Iowa, not a bad team, really. Pretty good team, and like really an elite defense, at least for Iowa. So I like the better defense getting points as well. So that's the case with Iowa. So that's what I'm going to do there. That's going to be the only play of the day. In the Fiesta Bowl, this is Liberty against Oregon. This is an interesting one. Oregon is up from 15 to 18.5, which I think that's gone a little bit too far. I would probably lean to taking the points with Liberty. In this one, Oregon has 79% of the tickets, but 74% of the cash. The line moved up a little bit more, I think, when the uncertainty was removed and Bo Nix announced that he is actually playing in this game, even though he's actually entering the NFL draft, and Oregon already knows who their next quarterback is going to be. It's, I forget, it's one of those players from one of these other teams that's already played in one of these bowls. I mentioned it in one of my other videos. I forget which team it was. One team's quarterback that left and wasn't going to play for that team anymore is now Oregon's quarterback. I forget who it was, but Bo Nix is going to be playing in this game, so that's kind of interesting because you kind of expected that maybe he would not want to try to not want to put himself in a position where he might get injured or anything like that and reduce his NFL draft stock, but he just wants to play in this game. I guess he is a competitor. It's a fairly big game. It's a Fiesta Bowl, but Oregon, they did have higher aspirations, man. Oregon was that Washington game. If they'd won maybe either game against Washington, I think they might be in the playoff. So especially the Pac-12 title game. If they'd won the Pac-12 title game, whoever won that game was going to get into the playoffs. So Oregon was one game away from getting into the playoff and competing for a national championship. And now they're in a big bowl, in a New Year's Six bowl, but it is the Fiesta Bowl. So is there going to be like a motivational aspect of that where they're not quite as motivated to be here as Liberty will be? Because Liberty, they had a great season, man. Liberty, I think they were an undefeated team. They won their conference. They're in the Fiesta Bowl, which I believe is the biggest bowl that this program has ever been to. I don't even know if they've been in division or in FBS football for that long. Excuse me. So I think this is a huge deal to Liberty. This is a game that I was looking at potentially playing Liberty, but I probably don't want to deal with it with Bo Nix being back. But Oregon, they were that close to being in the playoff, so they had higher aspirations in this. Liberty, for them, this is like the biggest game they'll be in program history. They might not be able to, this might be like the pinnacle for them, the peak for them. So they get to play like a really big name team in Oregon who, Oregon does outmatch them, but like depending on motivation here, will Liberty be able to come within this number? I think it's possible. If you see like a big motivational discrepancy in this one, something about this kind of has shades of that Boise, Oklahoma Fiesta Bowl where Boise was just clearly the way more motivated team. They had that hook and ladder and actually won the game. I don't think Liberty's actually going to win this game outright, but I do think the motivational discrepancy is enough that I think Liberty can come within this number in this game. So that's the way I look at that. And then in the actual college football playoff, the first of the two games in the Rose Bowl is Alabama, Michigan. Michigan looks like they're down from 2.5 to 2, but Alabama has 71% of the tickets and 67% of the cash. So the cash discrepancy is all on the Michigan side, and Alabama is the public team. They become the public kind of square underdog here. It's kind of like one of those Super Bowl-esque looking situations where the recreational bettors are coming in and seeing we get Alabama plus money. We got to take Alabama. Take Alabama plus the points. Take Alabama on the money line, right? So I think that's what's going on here. Alabama, they're the SEC team. Michigan, they're in turmoil because they had Jim Harbaugh went through that like cheating scandal or whatever, which, all of that is true. But I think Jim Harbaugh, he might be going back to the NFL, and I think he's probably going to be in an angry mood, and I think he's going to he's going to want to win this championship, especially after what Michigan did last year. What did Michigan do last year? They lost to TCU in one of these playoff games last year. That was an embarrassing loss, a big-time upset loss for them. They should have won that game. I think they know it. They're back, and they get a do-over. They get like a mulligan here, the Michigan mulligan. I think Michigan is going to show up. I think they actually have the better defense, even though everybody talks about how good Alabama's defense usually is. I think Michigan actually has the better defense and is actually the slightly better team, as the line is telling you they are. It's not by much. Alabama is a very good team and I think deserves to be here, but I think Michigan is just a little bit better this year. And I like Michigan here. I think the public is misreading this game, and they're on Alabama. They just like to take Alabama. Alabama's always here, man. They have the great history, great track record. They're from the SEC. What did we see last out of these two teams too? We saw Alabama beat Georgia like fairly convincingly, who was the top team in the country. That looks really good for Alabama. So people are going to think, of course, if Alabama can beat Georgia, they can certainly beat Michigan as well, right? Georgia might be a little bit better than Michigan, which I think maybe they are. So how could Alabama not win this game, right? And what we saw out of Michigan, they didn't look that great against Iowa. It was kind of a pretty ugly game, but was Michigan really pulling out all the stops in that game to beat Iowa? Probably not. I think like I said with my handicap in that one, I think Michigan just wanted to kind of get in and get out because Michigan was coming off that huge win over Ohio State that basically clinched the Big Ten for them, knowing that they were just going to face Iowa in the Big Ten championship and probably going to win that game easily. And they probably were already looking ahead to being in the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a better performance out of Michigan than in that one. Plus, Michigan was up against a really good Iowa defense, man. Like I just mentioned with Iowa there. Iowa's defense is very good, and they really ugly up games quite a bit. So I think Iowa's defense might actually be better than Alabama's, too. I'm not entirely sure about that, but potentially. So even though Alabama's a good team, it's been a good story. This Alabama team still did lose at home to Texas, although that was before they'd figured things out and before we knew who Alabama really was. But once Alabama had figured things out and we already knew who Alabama was, they should have lost to Auburn in that game near the end, even though that was a spot where I think they did get caught because Alabama was already, I believe they're already in the SEC championship game, right? Or no, did they need to win to get into it? I don't remember. I think they might have already been in the SEC championship, but they still needed to win to have playoff hopes. I guess that was the case. And they should have lost. They were that miracle fourth down play away from losing to Auburn. So I think people might just be forgetting about that now because they saw Alabama beat Georgia, and now that Auburn game is like a distant memory. But this Alabama team, I think, still is not a totally consistent team this year. So I actually do lean to Michigan in that one. And then in the other game, this is the game that's harder to read, man. And the way this playoff is set up is kind of unfortunate because Alabama and Michigan are two teams that are significantly better than Texas and Washington, I think. And the Alabama-Michigan team, those teams might beat each other up. That might be a really intense game, such that the team that comes out of that and gets into the championship might actually be in not the best spot against either Texas or Washington, which might be a slightly less physical game than the Michigan-Alabama game might be. So the Michigan-Alabama team might be beat up going into the championship, even though they do get a week off. They still might be beat up and even though either Michigan or Alabama will be the better team in the championship game. It might be an unfortunate spot where they're the more physically beat up team and they're in a bad spot there and they actually wind up dropping the game to one of the lesser teams there, which would suck. I don't think that would be great for college football, really, although I'm not really a fan of Michigan or Alabama, so I guess I wouldn't mind it that much. And if I have a play on it, I think I also wouldn't mind it as much. So Texas, Washington in this game. Texas is down from a 5-point favorite to a 4-point favorite, but Washington has 58% of tickets and 54% of the cash on it. So it looks like Washington, like Alabama, is a square public underdog here. So that's a little bit crazy to think about there, which I agree with Texas in this game, though. I think Washington, the public loves Michael Penix Jr., man. They love this Washington offense. The offense has looked really good all year, but their competition they face is a little bit less than what Texas has faced, man. Washington played in the Pac-12. Texas played in the Big 12, which is a little bit better than that. And Texas did, again, they won at Alabama, even though it was early in the year. So Texas played a bit of a tougher schedule. I think even though their quarterback situation is maybe a little bit questionable, I think Ewers is going to be playing in this game for Texas. Texas, I think they're the better team over Washington. I think Washington is the least of the four teams that are in the college football playoff. I don't think they're one of the actual top four teams in college football. I think they're closer to like somewhere between like 10th and 13th in the country, if I was going to be honest. And I think Texas is probably around like 8th or so, somewhere in that ballpark. So that's what we have going on here. I think Texas is the better team. The public is going to like to take the points with a Washington team that has just done no wrong. They're undefeated. They can score a ton. So the public likes Washington. I tend to look the other way here, and I like to play on the team that has looked a little bit uglier throughout the season, and that's been Texas. But remember that Texas did have quarterback injuries during the season as well, and they had to battle through that, and they still came out of it a one-loss team. So Texas has faced some adversity. So I do like Texas here, even though Washington, yeah, they did look good against Oregon, who does play a physical style of defense. Texas might be a team that can actually score with Washington. So that's what I look for here. I think it almost kind of looks too easy to take Washington's very prolific offense getting points here. Again, people looking at this thinking that Washington's the better team, they're the undefeated team. Why are they getting points here? Well, the odds makers are telling you Texas is actually the slightly better team here. So that's the way I look there. And I think maybe I will do something that I haven't really done before. I think I'm actually going to play on Michigan here because it almost just feels like a Super Bowl type of situation here. So I think with the car, even though we have like a decent sized NBA card today as well, I think I'm going to have two plays today, and they're both just going to be on college football. I'm going to put my bowl record on the line here. My bowl record's sitting at 3-2 on the season. I'm going to be on Iowa, and I'm going to be on Michigan in these two. So let's do it. Michigan, you can actually lay 1.5 with Michigan, so it's basically just to win the game. I like that price. You can get them probably to you can get them on the money line as well. I'm doing it for all the reasons I stated a little while ago. I'm on Michigan, minus 1.5 as well. Going over to, we have college basketball, but we only have like 4 games today, and they're all just double-digit numbers. I don't think there's anything that we can really even look at here. It's just not even interesting. I don't even think I should comment on the small college basketball slate today. In the NBA slate today, unfortunately, I think there are also some games with some big lines I don't want to get involved in, but there are also games where I just don't really want to have anything to do with either team here, which is kind of unfortunate. Like, I believe the T-Wolves are probably in a spot where they're coming off like some big game, I think. Actually, yeah, they beat the Lakers. They beat Dallas and the Lakers. So a couple of big games, and now they have to go on the road to face the Knicks, but the Knicks are returning from a road trip, so I don't like the spot for either team there, which is kind of unfortunate. The Cavs and the Raptors, I actually lean to the Raptors a little bit in that one, but the Raptors look like they only have 50% of the cash, but 83% of tickets on them. So they look like they look like a public team with the cash discrepancy going the other way. But the Raptors just lost to the Detroit Pistons, man. It doesn't get more embarrassing than that, really. So I would lean to the Raptors here after that. You lost to the Detroit Pistons, like, you're going to want to do something about this. And they're facing Cleveland, and they did lose the last time they faced Cleveland as well. And remember that that was a back-to-back when they lost to Detroit, and they were coming off almost beating the Celtics. The Raptors were. So they got caught. That was a tough spot. And Cleveland is coming off playing Milwaukee fairly close, like a pretty decent battle against Milwaukee to the end there. So, and that was after beating Dallas in a bad spot for Dallas, or I was on Cleveland in that one. Mitchell came back for the Milwaukee game I thought it was an injury, but it was actually an illness, and now they're going to Toronto. So I actually leaned to Toronto in that one. The Raptors, I actually think it might be one of the stronger plays on the NBA board situationally, but I just can't do it because even though the line's ticked up from 2 to 2.5, the public is all over the Raptors there for some reason, it looks like right now, although I can't really explain why that would be the case because Cleveland has the much better record. So that's a little bit weird. The Detroit Pistons, I don't know what to think about them. Like, are they going to suffer a letdown after finally getting their first win, or is that going to start some like type of momentum. That might start like a new like winning momentum for the Detroit Pistons. And they're getting 9 points now against Houston, who just played a close game and lost to the 76ers. So I think Houston might be in not the best spot there, really. And Brooklyn up next. I don't know if Brooklyn is the biggest game, really, though. So I'll just stay away from that, too. But you might want to actually lean to take the points of the Pistons there. Maybe the Pistons have figured something out. But the Pistons were coming off that almost win against the Celtics, too, where it was like you thought maybe the Pistons wouldn't be able to rebound from that, but the Pistons were playing against a Raptors team that had done almost the same thing in their prior game and had no time off. So the Pistons were actually in the slightly less bad spot against the Raptors, and they were able to take advantage and actually win that game. So I don't know what to think about that. Those are just some thoughts on the NBA slate here. And then I think are the Bucks returning from a road trip too? Yeah, they are. So the Bucks are also returning from a road trip that started on Christmas. They lost to the Knicks, then they went to Brooklyn, Cleveland. They're coming back home. They have 2 days off, though, and they get Indiana, and Indiana just beat the Knicks, who we saw beat Milwaukee, on Christmas. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. And I think Indiana did lose to the Bucks more recently after they'd beaten the Bucks in the in-season tournament, and then the Bucks beat them after the in-season tournament. So I don't even know. So there are kind of some conflicting factors going on in that one with the Pacers or the Bucks are up from 7.5 to 9 with 92% of the tickets and 65% of the cash. So the cash discrepancy is against the Bucks. I would still kind of lean to the Pacers there because the Bucks are returning from a road trip. But even so, I think it's not enough to get me involved in that one. And the Minnesota T-Wolves, by the way, are up from 1.5 to 2 with 67% of the cash on them, but 72% of the tickets on the Knicks. That doesn't make sense either, that the public would be on the Knicks against the T-Wolves team that have a way better record. If anything, I think it looks too easy to take the T-Wolves to basically just win the game there. But the Knicks returning from a road trip, I don't want anything to do with it. And then over in the NHL, there's one game, and it's the Winter Classic, which this year is Vegas at Seattle. So this is going to be an outdoor game at the Seattle Seahawks Stadium. I do lean to Seattle in this one, but I just don't think I can really actually do it. Vegas does have the cash discrepancy on them, but they're down from -140 to -130. It's a home game for Seattle, or semi-home, I guess, because it's not really on their home ice, but it is in Seattle at the Seahawks Stadium. Vegas has 81% of the cash, but 56% of the tickets. So it looks like they do have the cash discrepancy, but the spot that Vegas is in isn't really the best. I mean, they're coming off a pretty big win over the LA Kings. That was a pretty decent win, and that was they were returning home from a road trip, and they still were able to overcome that situation, beat the Kings, and they have Florida up next, who they just lost to on the road trip, which Florida got Stanley Cup revenge. So are they going to be looking past Seattle and looking forward to Florida? Maybe. Because Seattle, they've struggled this year, man, even though they're now at 14-14-9, which is better than what their record was before. Seattle has won 4 games in a row, so they do have some nice momentum there. But they're coming off a decent overtime win over Philadelphia. I still think this is a bigger game for Seattle than it is for Vegas. They get to host the Winter Classic. I think they are going to be pumped up for it. Vegas might have a little bit of attention still on their previous win that they just had over LA there, and maybe looking ahead to their next game against Florida. But maybe the fact that this is a big isolated Winter Classic game might have them focused a little bit on this game too. So maybe a little bit tough to read. So I can't quite get involved there with that, but that's the whole slate, man. Those are all the games today. In college football, I'm actually on Iowa plus 7.5, which I'm sorry that the line has gotten out of control, but I gave you an extra game because it just looks good to me. It looks Super Bowl-esque to me, and I think the reasons for it are good. I'm being a little bit crazy, but I'm taking Michigan. I'm laying just the 1.5, just need them to win the game. Those are my plays today, man. 2 college football bowl games on New Year's. What could be better than that, man? Iowa plus 7.5. I do still lean to the Iowa side. It's just obviously it's not as good if you're getting 6 or whatever, but I do like the defense getting points in that one. And then, like I said, yeah, Michigan minus 1.5 being the other play in that game that I think is going to be a bit Super Bowl-esque. And the teams might be treating that like it is already the the championship as well. Maybe even thinking that they might have an easier time against Texas and Washington. But after those two teams beat each other up, we might want to look to go with the winner of Texas Washington in the college football championship game. So we'll see about that. Enjoy the day, man. Enjoy the Monday slate of games, and Happy New Year's, man. It's 2024 now. Let's get 2024 started right, even though we're continuing the college football season and trying to end college football. I actually have a chance to get back into the black in college football and get actually above a losing. I think I actually still am. I think I am. I think I have won on this college football season, but I lost the previous season more than I won this season. So I want to get out of that hole too. Let's try to do it, man. Let's hopefully we go 2-0 in these. That would be awesome. Let's kick off the new year right. Happy New Year, everyone. Peace.